We are looking at the biggest fallers at the running back position over the past month now. Some of these guys, they should be falling. Some of these guys you should be avoiding in fantasy drafts. Others, on the other hand, I think actually may be interesting buy low candidates. But we're going to start with the trio of running backs over there in Miami. Now, I really have avoided the Miami running backs all offseason, right? I mean, whether it's Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, I think all these players have their own respective red flags. Whereas if you're looking at Jeff Wilson, this has never been a running back to see a 3-down workload, right? I mean, looking at over the past 3 years, he's averaged fewer than 2 targets per game. He's averaged about 10 carries per game. I mean, really, you're hoping that Jeff Wilson can turn into a high-end RB3 as kind of the ceiling that you have. Generally, I'd rather have a player with a little more upside. Going over to Raheem Mostert, Raheem Mostert hasn't been a top 24 running back in fantasy over the past 3 years. Raheem Mostert's sitting there averaging about the same, about 10 carries per game, 2 targets per game. And with Raheem Mostert, it's even a little worse because the man's 31 years old. I mean, if you're coming off a season where, you had 11 carries per game and about 2.5 targets, I can say, okay, if you're a rookie, I mean, we'll look at some rookies that were averaging this last year. We can say, you're probably going to improve in year 2. But no, not with Raheem Mostert. When you're 31, it's only downhill. With Devon Achane, I mean, this is someone that we've never seen in the NFL before, but what we're looking at with this overall prospect profile is a tiny, tiny running back. Now, I understand he can be an effective NFL player, and I think that he can be a really strong NFL option because he's a pretty good passing down back, as well as the fact that he is an elite athlete. I mean, the man ran a 4.32. This is the reason that he went at the end of the 3rd round in this year's NFL draft. But at the same time, the man is 5'9" and weighs 188 pounds. We haven't seen a running back come into the NFL over the past decade at this size and have fantasy football success in particular. So if we're looking at him in our running back prospect model, Devon Achane is actually down there with guys like Tajay Spears, Roshan Johnson, Chase Brown. We'll talk about a couple of these names a little later on. And really the only hit that you can find from our running back prospect model with running backs in this similar score range since the year 2014 is Ramondre Stevenson. Outside of that, it is bust after bust after bust. So on the whole, I think that these running backs in Miami aren't really too exciting from their overall talent profiles. Now, what is very exciting, however, is the fact that they are the only guys in this Miami Dolphins backfield. This is a Miami Dolphins offense that should have sustained drives because they have a great coaching staff. They have a great quarterback. They have great wide receivers. They should have trips to the red zone, and they should have touchdown opportunities for this backfield. So that's very exciting, right? But you're only drafting these guys based off that perceived opportunity. And my stance this entire offseason is if you're only drafting them based off of perceived opportunity, I would rather avoid them earlier on and make sure that Dalvin Cook's not going there. And make sure that Ezekiel Elliott's not going there. And make sure that Kareem Hunt's not going there. Make sure Leonard Fournette's not going there. Because if one of those backs signs, then your entire bull case on any of these Miami backs is kind of thrown out the window. Now, you're finally seeing people realize this, where Dalvin Cook, it was reported, he actually saw a contract from the Miami Dolphins on June 28th. Now, he hasn't signed the deal. I guess they lowballed him. I don't exactly know. But this has resulted in Jeff Wilson falling for pick 168 to 187. Raheem Mostert falling for pick 153 to 171. And Devon Achane falling for pick 112 to 119. Now, if you're looking at the new price point for these running backs in comparison to where they were going a month ago, I think the new price point accurately presents the risk that a veteran running back is going over to Miami. And if you were drafting in a underdog best ball draft where you have to go extremely deep, I'm actually fine drafting Mostert in the 17th round. I'm fine drafting Jeff Wilson in the 17th, 18th round. I'm fine drafting Devon Achane in round 10 or round 11, hopefully round 11. But when these guys have been falling to me in drafts, I've actually started to scoop them up a bit. Now, that's, of course, in underdog, where if Jeff Wilson has 2 random weeks where he scores over 20 fantasy points, and I got him in round 17, round 18, he's a profitable pick. In your casual redraft league, should we be taking these guys? If you're playing in like an ESPN league where you're submitting your starting lineup each and every week and you're only starting 2 running backs and a flex, in reality, in that format, I don't think Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert have the upside that are even worth their roster spot. You're taking on a lot of risk and not much upside at all. In that casual or redraft format, the only running back I'd even be considering here would be Devon Achane, and that's going to be specifically for full PPR leagues. Now, what I like about drafting Devon Achane, if you can get him at the very end of your fantasy football draft in a casual league that's full PPR, is even if, say, Ezekiel Elliott were to go over to the Miami Dolphins, you could still possibly see Devon Achane as a useful player, right? He could still be in a running back by committee where he's the 3rd down guy and then you have someone else there that's handling the volume on 1st and 2nd down. It just depends on where you are going to be. You shouldn't have been drafting these guys earlier on in the offseason at the higher price, but now, I mean, it's kind of fine. Now, we have another rookie to talk about. This guy's going to be Chase Brown. Now, obviously, Chase Brown hinges on Joe Mixon. If Joe Mixon is no longer a Cincinnati Bengal, Chase Brown will skyrocket up fantasy football drafts. And if you remember, in underdog drafts about a month ago, especially at the end of April, people were kind of assuming that Mixon was on the way out in Cincinnati. Like, Joe Mixon opened up underdog drafts in April with a 7th round ADP. Since then, he's actually risen to where now you're seeing him go at the beginning of the 5th round in those underdog drafts. And as Joe Mixon has risen, you've actually seen Chase Brown fall. Now, a couple different things. One, we actually had a recent report. This is from RotoWorlds, and I believe they grabbed it from The Athletic. But you have a report saying that Joe Mixon and his camp kind of understands that if he is going to remain a Cincinnati Bengal this next year, he's going to have to take a pay cut. Now, obviously, I'm not smart enough to know what that pay cut is. I'm sure that they are working on it. But if that doesn't happen, and maybe Joe Mixon's on the way out. I mean, hell, we just saw the same thing happen with Dalvin Cook. Now, if we're going over and looking at the Chase Brown profile, he's a pretty good athlete. I mean, the man ran a 4.43. He has a BMI of 30. He's 209 pounds, so he's not severely undersized like what you would have with Devon Achane. He's an okay pass catcher. Now, why I'm not like head over heels for Chase Brown, why I really haven't drafted him at all this offseason, is the man did go at the very end of day 3. He was like a end of 5th, beginning of 6th round NFL pick. And if you look at historical hit rates from that range, I mean, it is very, very difficult to assume a running back actually is anything at that point of the draft. Now, of course, we're coming off a season where Tyler Algier won you some underdog leagues at the very end of the year. And we can also look at, I guess, Isaiah Pacheco winning those leagues as well. But now let's go over to Mr. Roshan Johnson, another rookie falling. This is something that I think is going to continue to happen. Now, we talked about this a while ago. I hope y'all listened. But what I've noticed in these drafts that happen right after the NFL draft, if you're drafting at the end of April, if you're drafting at the beginning of May, everybody has been listening and everybody's been talking about rookies. I mean, for 3 months at that point. So naturally, those rookies are going to be going high in fantasy football drafts. And as we get closer to the start of the year and people begin to run actual real projections, they realize, oh, okay, maybe we should push down the day 3 running back. Maybe he is not as locked in with the workload as we initially thought back in May. You're kind of seeing that with Roshan Johnson. Reports coming out that Deonta Foreman is actually a running back that's getting a considerable amount of usage here. You also have a report saying that the Chicago Bears don't plan to run a 3-down back. I mean, they're going to have a running back by committee. And that's kind of baseline expectation, right? Like if we go ahead and look at the player props that Underdog right now has out for the season, they have Deonta Foreman at 460.5 rushing yards. And if you're going to be looking at Khalil Herbert, a running back that I actually like his price tag, he's the running back 40 in Underdog drafts, but he is currently at 600 rushing yards. I believe they don't have a line out for Roshan. No, they don't. But nonetheless, there's a lot of uncertainty with the Chicago Bears situation. I think as Roshan Johnson falls, he becomes more and more appealing because in my mind, not too much has changed outside the report that they really like Deonta Foreman at training camp. But real quick side note, of course, if y'all want to check out any of those Underdog player props, if you want to get into a draft with us, we are drafting literally every single day in the live stream. I'm not going to miss a single day until 2024. And we are drafting in Underdog best ball drafts. That's how I'm able to draft in so many leagues since it's best ball, no time commitment at all during this season. If you sign up with the link in the live chat description or comment section with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get your first deposit match dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get my 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com, available in damn near every state. Massive prizes. I mean, hell, that's how I won $150,000 in 700 drafts last year. But going over to our next guy, we are going to be looking at Dalvin Cook. We actually have a string of guys. Let's throw them all up. We got Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott. Pretty much all these unsigned backs are falling. Now, I have drafted a decent amount of Kareem Hunt. I've drafted a decent amount of Ezekiel Elliott. Now, I've been drafting Dalvin Cook a ton over the past 2-ish weeks. Now, the reason being is when there's a lot of volatility, when we don't really know what to expect with these players, that's when I specifically like targeting them in these underdog best ball drafts. Just because, like, say, if you're in Best Ball Mania, right, it's a $25 buy-in, $15 million prize pool, $3 million for first place. So I'm trying to draft the guys in the middle rounds or at the very end of drafts that I believe have the absolute highest ceiling possible. And that's why I'm drafting someone like Ezekiel Elliott over Jeff Wilson, right? But I just think that the more and more days go by, I mean, the more and more we are going to see people push down these veterans before they sign. I mean, we had reports with Dalvin, like we said, that he got the contract offer for the Miami Dolphins. Another report that the Jets have, quote unquote, done their homework with them. If you're looking at Kareem Hunt, you have some reports saying that he plans to play in 2023. Ways back, you actually had the Washington Commanders possibly looking at him. I mean, hell, we had a report on Twitter. This is coming from NFL Rumors, so who the hell knows if this is any true. But saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers were possibly looking at him as that running back 2/running back by committee. I mean, that would be devastating to the Najee Harris, Jalen Warren teams that I've drafted. And if you're looking over at Ezekiel Elliott, the last thing that we got was the Dallas Cowboys are still possibly on him. I don't know what to expect with all these veterans. I think it's very difficult to project. I would say if you're in like a casual ESPN shallow league, I mean, if you want to draft like Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, at the very end of your draft, I actually like it for a couple different reasons, right? If you draft, say, Leonard Fournette or Kareem Hunt in the last round of your casual ESPN draft, and they don't sign this next year, or they sign in a situation that you don't like, hell, you're going to need someone to cut week 1 anyway. By the time we get to week 1, we need an easy cut because I can promise you there'll be 15 guys that you want to run to the waiver wire and pick up. So what I like doing in my casual shallow redraft formats is selecting players at the very end of the draft that I believe have a decent amount of upside if everything breaks right for them. But at the same time, it would be easy for me to cut them by week 1 if things don't break in their way. I think that's kind of what you have here. And like I was saying in those underdog best ball drafts as well, I don't mind at all drafting them there either at the very end of drafts, just because say if Kareem Hunt signs with Miami, or if Kareem Hunt goes back to KC, or if Ezekiel Elliott goes to KC, or Ezekiel Elliott goes to Dallas, they all skyrocket up when they sign. Now, of course, I was the guy drafting Will Fuller a few years back when Will Fuller gave us a total of 0 points. So do not listen to me. I'm an idiot. Now, going over to our next guy, I don't really see what's happening with Damien Pierce. I thought Damien Pierce was already a phenomenal value in the 6th round, and now he's falling even further. He was going at pick 63. Now he's going at pick 68. I just feel like I'm going crazy here. Damien Pierce last year was a 4th, 5th round pick by the time we got to the start of the season. Damien Pierce was a day 3 rookie that had proven nothing in the NFL, that had Davis Mills as a starting quarterback. And now, instead of having to select Damien Pierce in the 4th and 5th round, you are getting Damien Pierce at the 6-7 turn in these underdog drafts. After we saw him as a rookie go out there and average 17 carries per game, go out there and average 3 targets per game. After we saw him turn into a 3-down back, you're getting him cheaper with the massive quarterback upgrade with CJ Stroud this next season because of Devin Singletary, because they signed a backup running back in Houston that may see 30 to 35% of the snaps out of this backfield. Damien Pierce, late 6th, early 7th round, is one of the easiest buttons to press in fantasy football drafts right now. I mean, it's crazy the range he's going in. And Brian Robinson was also someone that I thought was a little underrated back a month ago when he was going at pick 107, and he's continuing to fall. Now he's at pick 111. Now, I thought both Washington backs were underrated. I'm sure you can go back and look at the video that we made calling Antonio Gibson a must-draft running back. But what is crazy is we've seen Gibson skyrocket up draft boards, which he should. We were talking about this at the very beginning of the offseason with the departure of J.D. McKissic, leading to more targets and more snaps going over to Antonio Gibson, the natural pass catcher in this backfield. But just because Gibson is moving up draft boards, that doesn't mean Brian Robinson needs to be moving down these. Similar to Damien Pierce. Going into last year, Brian Robinson was a running back that had proven nothing, that had just had some positive training camp buzz, and he was going higher in fantasy drafts then than he is now. His rookie season, he averaged 17 carries per game. Now, what is not good at all about Brian Robinson is this is a running back that doesn't catch the ball. And generally I love targeting pass catchers, but if we're going to be fair to this as well, he was a rookie last year. Maybe this changes. Maybe he can get up to 1.5 targets per game, 2 targets per game with the departure of J.D. McKissic. See, I really like the price point of both Damien Pierce and Brian Robinson. And I think they fit both a best ball construction as well as, just a regular redraft league. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to get in a draft with us later today, tomorrow, the next day, it doesn't matter when you're watching this. Later today, we will be drafting on Underdog Fantasy on the live stream. You can go sign up with the link in the live chat, the link in the description, the link in the comment section. Use promo code FLOCK, and they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you'll get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com. And that's also where you can check out all the player props that were in this video. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope that we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.